They dragged her across the diner floor like she was nothing. Customers pulled out their phones. The cops didn't listen, didn't ask questions, didn't care that she was crying and begging them to stop, all because one customer pointed at a black server and said, "She attacked me." What those officers didn't know, what no one in that diner knew, was that the man they were about to humiliate on live video was the daughter of someone powerful enough to destroy every badge in that room. And when the truth finally came out, the silence that followed was louder than the sirens. Stay till the end, because the moment they realize who her father is, everything flips and nobody walks away clean. They didn't see a human being. They saw a uniform, an apron, a black girl doing her job quietly in a small-town diner. When the police walked in that night, no one thought it would turn into a public execution of dignity. No one thought handcuffs would come out over a lie. And no one, especially the cops, imagined that the girl they were dragging across the floor was connected to power they could never touch. She didn't scream. She didn't fight back. She just kept asking one question that nobody wanted to hear. What did I do? The customers watched. Phones came out. Someone laughed. Someone whispered, "She must have deserved it." But what they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly know, was that every second they were humiliating her. The clock was ticking toward the worst mistake of their careers, because when the truth finally surfaced, when her father's name hit the room, the same cops who dragged her like trash would be begging to stand up straight. And by then, it was already too late. The diner was loud, greasy, and full of people who thought they were better than the woman serving them. Late afternoon rush, plates clanking, coffee spilling. And right in the middle of it, a black server named Naomi is moving fast, head down, doing her job like she'd done 1,000 times before. She wore a simple uniform, no makeup, no jewelry, nothing that screamed power, just another server to them. That's why no one cared when the customer at booth 7 snapped his fingers. "Hey, girl." Naomi paused for half a second, took a breath, turned around. "Yes, sir?" That was mistake number 1, because the man smirked, loud, arrogant, the kind of smile that only comes from people who think uniforms define worth. "I asked for almond milk." "Not whatever this is," he said. Pushing the cup toward her like it was trash, Naomi glanced at the receipt, calm, professional. "I'm sorry, sir." "The order says I don't care what it says," he cut her off, voice rising so nearby tables could hear. "You people never listen." The word people hung in the air. Some customers looked away. Some watched closely. A few already had their phones out. Naomi felt it. That familiar heat in her chest. The one that comes when you know what's happening, but you're expected to swallow it. "I can remake it for you," she said evenly. The man laughed, loud, disrespectful. "No, I want a manager, and I want her dealt with." He pointed at Naomi like she was a problem to be removed. The manager rushed over, nervous, already apologizing, but not to Naomi. "What seems to be the issue, sir?" the manager asked. "This server is being aggressive," the man said instantly. She raised her voice, made me uncomfortable. Naomi's head snapped up. "That's not true," she said, firmer now. "I never see," the man interrupted. "She's doing it again." The manager hesitated. Looked at Naomi. Not as a person, but as a liability. And that's when the man leaned back, said the words that changed everything. "I want the police." The diner went quiet. Naomi felt her stomach drop, because she knew how this story usually ends. And outside, sirens were already getting closer. By the time the second police cruiser pulled up, the entire diner had gone quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, the heavy kind. The kind where everyone knows something is wrong, but no one wants to say it out loud. The black server stood frozen near the counter, her hand still shaking from where the officer had grabbed her moments earlier. Her apron was crooked now, coffee stains spreading across the fabric like a badge of shame she never earned. The customer, the same man who accused her of stealing, sat back in his booth with his arms crossed. Smug, confident, Satisfied, he watched the scene like entertainment. One officer spoke loudly on purpose, making sure the whole diner could hear. "We got a report you caused a disturbance and attempted theft. You want to explain yourself?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again because she already knew how this usually went, no matter what she said. It wouldn't matter. Her manager stood a few feet away, eyes glued to the floor. Not defending her, not correcting the lie, not saying a single word about how the register balanced perfectly, or how the customer had been rude from the moment he sat down. Silence was easier, and silence once again worked against her. One officer reached for her arm, again this time harder. Gasps rippled through the diner. A woman near the window whispered, "That's unnecessary." But nobody stood up. Nobody intervened. The server's chair scraped loudly against the floor as the officer shoved it aside, ordering her to step away from the counter. Her badge fell off and skidded across the tile. Her name stared up at everyone. Still, no one picked it up. Outside, a few people had gathered, phones already raised, recording. The flashing red and blue lights painted her face in harsh colors, turning fear into spectacle. And then came the words that changed the entire tone of the room. "Let's take her in," one officer said casually. "Figure it out at the station." Her heart dropped. Not because she was guilty, but because she knew what that meant. Humiliation. A record. A story twisted beyond recognition. As they started guiding her toward the door, she finally spoke, not loudly, not angrily, but clearly. "You're making a mistake." The customer laughed. The officer didn't even look at her. But what none of them knew, what no one in that diner could possibly imagine, was that this moment, this very moment of public humiliation, was about to trigger consequences none of them were ready for. And the people laughing now, they were about to wish they had stayed silent. By the time the police cruiser doors slammed shut behind her, the diner had gone dead quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet either, the ugly kind. Forks frozen midair, phones half raised. People suddenly realizing this situation had gone too far. The black serverolia stood cuffed between two officers, her apron still on, coffee stain near the hem, eyes steady but jaw tight. She wasn't crying. She wasn't yelling. That's what scared them. Because people who know they're innocent don't panic. People who know the truth is about to explode. Wait, the customer who'd started it, all the middle-aged man with the red face and loud mouth, was suddenly less confident. His chest wasn't puffed out anymore. His voice dropped to octaves. "Hey, I didn't say arrest her," he muttered. "I just said she was suspicious." Suspicious. That word hung in the air like poison. Olia finally spoke. Calm, controlled. "Dangerous. You said I stole your wallet. You said I threatened you. You said I didn't belong here." She looked straight at him. Which part was true? The man opened his mouth. Nothing came out, because the manager who'd been nodding along 10 minutes earlier was now staring at the security monitor behind the counter, his face drained of color. On the screen, clear as day, the customer had pulled his wallet out, paid, put it in his coat pocket, then forgot where he put it. No theft. No confrontation until he created one. The manager swallowed hard. "Officers, I think we need to." One cop cut him off. "Too late for that." He turned to Alia. His tone changed. Not softer-careful. "Miss, what's your full name?" She gave it no hesitation. The second officer typed it into the system and then paused. Typed it again, looked up, then back down. His partner noticed. "What?" The officer leaned closer to the screen. His voice dropped. "You might want to call this in." The diner doors swung open just then. A man in a dark coat stepped inside, snow still clinging to his shoulders. Not flashy, not loud. But the entire room felt it when he entered like gravity. Shifted. He didn't raise his voice, didn't rush. He just said one sentence, calm and deadly. "Why is my daughter in handcuffs?" Every head snapped toward him. The officers turned slowly. The manager's knees nearly gave out, and the customer, the one who laughed, pointed. Accused finally understood something far too late. This wasn't about a diner anymore. This was about who they just humiliated in public, and the reckoning hadn't even started yet. The moment the officers grabbed her arms, the diner went silent, then exploded. Chairs scraped. Someone gasped. Phones came out. "Don't touch me like that." The black server shouted, her voice shaking but loud enough to cut through the room. "I didn't do anything wrong." One officer twisted her wrist harder. "Stop resisting," he barked, even though she wasn't. The customer, the same man who accused her, leaned back in his booth with a smug grin. "That's what liars get," he said loudly. "People like her always play the victim." That's when things crossed a line. They dragged her, not walked, dragged her across the diner floor. Her apron tore. A glass shattered. Someone yelled, "This is wrong." But no one stepped in. The manager suddenly panicked. Professors, maybe we should slow down, too late," one cop snapped. "She's going outside." It's outside in handcuffs in front of everyone. The cold night air hit her face as they shoved her against a squad car. Flashing lights painted her skin red and blue like a criminal movie scene. Her voice broke. "Please," she said. "Call my dad." "Just let me make one call," the cops laughed. "Your dad?" One officer scoffed. "What, he gonna sue us?" That's when she looked straight at him, tears in her eyes. Jaw-clenched hand said the sentence that changed everything. "My father doesn't sue people. He owns them." The officer froze. The laughing stopped, and somewhere behind them, a deep voice cut through the night. "Take your hands off my daughter now." That was the moment they realized this wasn't a nobody they had just humiliated. This was the biggest mistake of their careers. By the time the police realized this situation wasn't routine, the damage was already done. The diner had gone silent. No more laughter. No more phones raised for entertainment. Just tension thick enough to choke on. The manager who'd been yelling 5 minutes ago, now he was sweating through his button-down, pacing behind the counter like a trapped rat. The two cops who dragged her out, their confidence was gone. One officer kept glancing at his radio. The other kept rubbing his jaw like he could physically erase what he'd just done. Because here's the thing. Nobody had planned for the body cam was still rolling. Every word. Every shove. Every lie from the customer who started it all. And then the call came in. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just a quiet change in posture. The older officer froze mid-sentence, listening. "Yes, sir. Yes. I understand." His face drained of color. He ended the call and didn't say a word at first. Then, for the first time since they arrived, he looked at the black server like a human being. "Ma'am," said. Voice suddenly careful. "Can you confirm your full name?" She did. The manager's knees nearly buckled, because that name wasn't just familiar. It was untouchable. The customer who'd accused her. She started backing away, shaking her head. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Too late." The younger cop whispered, "Sir, that's his daughter." Just like that, everything flipped. The same cops who slammed her into cold tile were now standing straighter, quieter, careful. With every word, the manager tried to laugh it off. "Look, we can fix this. Free meals. Apologies," the older officer cut him off. "No. You can stop talking." Then he turned back to her. "Ma'am, backup is on the way. Not for her, for them, because somewhere across the city, a man who didn't raise his voice, and didn't need to, had just been informed how his daughter was treated over a lie. And when he arrived, nobody in that diner would ever forget what happens when power walks in after injustice thinks it won. The moment they pushed her outside, everything crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. Cold air hit her face as the diner door slammed behind them. Phones were already out. Strangers filming. Whispers turning into judgment. To anyone watching, it looked like another problem customer getting handled by the police. Another black woman treated like she was disposable. But she didn't scream. She didn't beg. She stood there, hands shaking, eyes burning, not from fear, but from disbelief. One officer tightened his grip and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "You should have known better." That sentence did something. Because she finally spoke. Her voice was low, controlled, dangerous. "I did nothing wrong." Officer laughed. That laugh echoed. And it was the worst mistake of his career. Inside the diner, the manager crossed his arms, proud. Customers nodded like justice had been served. The woman who accused her smirked, already crafting her version of the story. Outside, the officer reached for his radio to call it in. That's when his partner froze, because the name on her ID didn't just register, it hit. Hard. His face drained of color. He looked again. Slower this time. Careful, like he was hoping. His eyes were lying. They weren't. The air shifted. The grip loosened. The laughter stopped. And for the first time since this began, the power started slipping out of their hands. The diner wasn't loud anymore. It was dangerous quiet. The same cops who dragged her across the floor now stood stiff, hands twitching near their belts. Not confident. Not dominant. Cornered, the manager tried to speak, but his voice cracked halfway through the sentence. He suddenly remembered every lie he told. Every camera he forgot to check. Every time he watched someone humiliated and called it procedure. The customer who started it all? He stopped smirking, because now he realized something terrifying. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was a mistake. The lead officer stepped closer to her, lowering his voice like that would fix anything, ma'am. Maybe we should talk privately. She didn't answer. She looked around the diner instead, at the people who laughed, recorded, whispered. At the phones that were suddenly being lowered. At the waitress who avoided her eyes because she knew she could have helped. And did. And then she said something that froze everyone. You already decided who I was the moment I walked in. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. You didn't ask questions. You didn't check facts. You didn't listen. The officer swallowed. Outside, sirens echoed, not approaching. Arriving backup wasn't coming for her. It was coming because someone important had made a call. The manager's face went pale when he heard the words whispered between officers. Internal affairs is on the way. That's when panic hit. Because this wasn't just about a black server anymore. This was about careers ending, badges being stripped, and a story that was already spreading faster than anyone could stop. She hadn't said her father's name yet. She didn't have to, because everyone in that diner suddenly understood one thing. They were never in control. They just thought they were. By the time the waitress was shoved into the back of the patrol car, the diner was no longer loud. It was silent. Not the peaceful kind, the kind where people realize they just crossed a line they can't step back from. Phones were out now. Not laughing anymore. Recording. The same customers who had been yelling minutes ago suddenly wouldn't make eye contact. Outside. Red and blue lights painted the street like a warning. Sin no one wanted to read. That's when the first crack appeared. One officer's radio crackled, then another. There. Body cams were still running, and the waitress hands cuffed. Head held high, looked straight through the glass of the cruiser, calm in a way that didn't make sense. No crying. No begging. No panic. That's when the senior officer frowned, because innocent people panic, but people who know something don't. Inside the diner, the manager was sweating now. He tried to justify it. Tried to explain it away. Tried to say the customer felt threatened, but the footage didn't lie. The accusation didn't match the video. The timeline didn't add up. And the customer, she was already deleting messages from her phone too late. A patrol supervisor arrived, then another unit. Then, something that made everyone freeze. An unmarked black SUV pulled up across the street. No sirens. No lights. Just authority. The officers noticed it too. One of them whispered, "Why would internal affairs respond this fast?" The waitress finally spoke, not loudly, not dramatically, just one sentence. "Can I make my call now?" The supervisor hesitated, because at this point, denying her that call would be another charge. She dialed. One ring. That's it, on the other end. A calm male voice answered. She didn't explain. She didn't cry. She said one thing. "They arrested me." The footage will explain the rest. Then she handed the phone back, And for the first time that night, the cops realized this wasn't a mistake. This was about to become a career-ending incident, and the people who laughed first were about to disappear from the story completely. They thought the worst was over. They were dead wrong. The diner was still buzzing. Phones up, whispers everywhere. The manager was pacing like a trapped rat, sweat soaking through his collar. The cops stood stiff now, not cocky. Not loud, quiet in that dangerous way people get when they realize they've already crossed the line. That's when the black server's phone vibrated in her shaking hand. One buzz. Then, another. She looked down at the screen. The name made her freeze. She didn't answer right away. She looked up instead. Straight at the officers who had dragged her across tile like trash. Straight at the manager who nodded while it happened. Straight at the customers who filmed instead of speaking up. Then she answered. "Dad," she said softly. The room went silent. Every cop's spine locked. The manager stopped breathing. Voice on the other end wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It carried authority. The kind that doesn't raise its tone because it owns the room without trying. "Are you hurt?" he asked. She swallowed. "They cuffed me. Slammed me. Over a lie?" A pause. Not shock. Calculation? "Where are you?" She named the diner. Another pause. Then, "Stay exactly where you are." She lowered the phone. The cops exchanged looks now. Not confusion, not annoyance, fear. The kind that creeps in when the math stops adding up and you realize you arrested the wrong person. The manager tried to laugh it off. A weak fake chuckle. Okay, he said, hands up. "Let's all calm down. Maybe we overreacted. No harm done, right?" One of the officers snapped at him. "Shut up." 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Outside engines roared. Not sirens, black SUVs, luxury military clean. Windows tinted dark enough to hide. God. They didn't rush. They arrived. Doors opened in sync. Men in tailored coats stepped out first. Then, women with earpieces. Then one final car. The crowd pressed against the windows. The front door opened, and the air in the diner changed. A man walked in like he already owned the place. Not arrogant. Not flashy, controlled. Calm, eyes sharp enough to cut glass. One officer whispered, "Oh, hell." The man stopped in the middle of the floor and spoke, voice steady, lethal. "Which one of you put your hands on my daughter?" No one answered because suddenly nobody wanted to be brave anymore. The diner went dead quiet. Not shocked quiet. Not confused quiet. That funeral-level silence. Where everyone suddenly realizes they've been standing on the wrong side of history. The lead officer finally looked down at the phone in his hand. His knuckles turned white because the name on the screen wasn't just a name. It was a legacy. The same man who funded half the department's equipment. The same man whose foundation paid for the very body cams recording this disaster. The same man whose legal team had ended careers without ever raising their voices. The officer swallowed hard. He looked at her again. Not as a server, not as a suspect, but as a warning, "Ma'am," he said quietly. "We're going to uncuff you." Too late. The cuffs came off. But the damage stayed. Her father arrived 10 minutes later. No sirens, no shouting. Just a black sedan pulling up like it owned the street because it did. He didn't rush. Didn't threaten. Didn't yell. He walked in, looked at his daughter's red wrists, then at the officers, and said one sentence. "I will let the footage speak." That was it. No courtroom drama. No public tantrum. Just consequences moving silently and permanently by the end of the week. The customer who lied was charged for filing a false police report. The diner was shut down pending investigation. 2 officers were placed on unpaid leave, then quietly resigned. Body cam footage went viral without a single caption, and the comments said everything the law didn't have to. She never went back to that diner. She didn't need revenge. She didn't need closure, because sometimes the most brutal ending isn't shouting, it's walking away while The world collapses behind you knowing they finally understand who you were after. They already destroyed themselves. And that's the part they'll never recover from.